From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernishin. Pretty much as far back as I can remember into my journalism career, I've always made a point of finding the time for political underdogs. Mostly this is because it always seemed to me that the system was stacked against anyone who doesn't already buy into the system, making real change almost impossible to bring about, even when change is desperately needed. If you're at heart a conservative animal, you will have no problem with this particular brand of Catch-22 because change, by definition, is to be regarded with suspicion and should be difficult to achieve. But if you tend toward the progressive side of the political spectrum, it seems fundamentally unfair that the media should get to decide who gets to be treated seriously during election campaigns and who doesn't. No news organization, and certainly no local podcast, has infinite resources, of course. We all have to draw the line somewhere. Some people are just too far outside the mainstream, too radical, or just plain weird to bother giving them space and time that can be better spent elsewhere. But still, I decided long ago to be a little more accommodating, a little more open-minded than most of my colleagues in the news business, because sometimes it pays off. I'll let you decide whether that's the case with my guest for this episode. Zelda Briarwood is running in the Democratic primary for the congressional seat that belongs to North Carolina District 11, which includes the northwestern third of Polk County. I've already talked with two of her competitors, Jamie Ager and Richard Hudspeth, both of whom are known entities who are raising decent amounts of money and attracting respectable levels of support and attention. You should listen to those interviews if you haven't already. Ms. Briarwood doesn't have those advantages. She's a 35-year-old former wilderness therapist and a banking field technician who is, to be blunt, running an uphill battle for the nomination. But the truth is, neither of the better-known challengers has any more political experience than she does. Which is to say, they are all starting their runs for the U.S. Congress from absolute zero. They are all political neophytes. I think that says a lot about the state of the Democratic Party in District 11. And not necessarily in a bad way. And the more I thought about it, the more appropriate I thought it would be to ensure that every candidate who has demonstrated at least some understanding of how to mount an election campaign get a chance to be heard. We talked at the Saluda Library on October 18th, squeezing in the interview between No Kings rallies in Hendersonville and Columbus. Zelda Briarwood, welcome to Folklore.
Happy to be here.
Let's start off real simple. Talk about who you are, where you come from, and how you came to be doing what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, so Zelda Briarwood is my name. I grew up outside of Philly and then moved down here for college. So I went to college at University of South Carolina studying psychology, then ended up going to grad school in Prescott College, which is over in Arizona, to pursue adventure-based psychotherapy. However, I ended up succumbing to addiction and ended up going through like the darkest time of my life. And it wasn't until like I actually gave recovery a full shot that I came back to the South and wanted to provide the same support that other people gave me when I was in my lowest lows and needed the support. So came here, started doing wilderness education. I would take young men ages 18 to at most 35 on backpacking excursions all throughout Western North Carolina. I did admissions for Outward Bound. I did admissions for Cooper Reese, which is a residential treatment facility out in Asheville. I also worked for Our Voice, which is a nonprofit based in Buncombe County that does case management for survivors of sexual violence and human trafficking. Needless to say, my background is in direct service. I very much find my cup filling up when I am supporting others and giving back the support that I got. And with that, I was very much exposed to, the good and the bad of our social safety nets, what it is to work on with the most vulnerable when it comes to the houseless population, with people on Medicare and Medicaid, when people are on SNAP benefits, WIC, unemployment, the list goes on. I wanted to take that opportunity to spend as much time as I could with people so that way I could figure out exactly how to better help, my community.
And how long have you been in our part of the world?
Yeah, so Western North Carolina, I would say 2018 is when I first started working over at Red Oak. However, my family moved from up north in New York down to Waxhaw, North Carolina, when I was in my teens. So, like, we've been in North Carolina for over 2 decades.
All right. I can understand the focus of your career so far has been helping people. Politics is supposedly the same thing, just through different methods. But what made you decide that you wanted to get involved at the political level? Now you were involved with the Haywood County Young Democrats,
That's correct.
correct? So what brought you into that, and then why decide to run for Congress?
Sure. After Helene and after the election, I spent a decent amount of time just reflecting, meditating, praying, trying to figure out exactly what it is my next steps need to be. And when the thought of entering into the political sphere and running for public office came through my head, the little ball of anxiety that I have that has sat underneath my heart basically my entire life, it was gone for 10 seconds. And if that's not providence, I don't know what is. So I don't know to what end my higher power wants me to do this, but I'm going to see it through to the end because it's where I'm being compelled to go. I decided to focus in on the political spectrum because I truly felt there was a lack of representation in the political sphere when it comes to the working class, when it comes to, you know, the actual people. The majority of people that we end up sending on over to Capitol Hill and into politics, they're rich, they come from political families, they're in the hands of PACs, super PACs, and corporations and whatnot. I can think of maybe less than 5 people that actually are in it for the right reasons and want it to do it to represent the people. And when I realized that that was the case, I knew I had to do something. And rather than waiting around for a candidate with those ideals to show up, I said, screw it. I'm going to go into it and actually focus in on what the people want.
Now, you're not the only youngish candidate running for Congress in America this coming election cycle, but the question still has to be posed. Why Congress? Why not go the conventional route, say municipal council, a county commission, or an appointed board like a planning board or something before you actually go straight to the like basically the third from the top?
Mhm. Well, one could theoretically go through that realm, but that didn't seem like it was going to be the best use of the expertise that I have and the skills that I have. Because I've worked with people like, the Buncombe County District Courts, the District Attorney's Office, the Special Victims Unit, and whatnot, that lens really makes a huge difference when trying to understand politics as a whole. And we have officially entered a realm where politics as usual is not what the people want. They're over it 100%, and they want someone that is actually wanting to be held accountable, that knows what it's like to be working class. And rather than sitting there and, going through the slow steps of doing, local, officially going into federal, I don't want to waste time anymore. I don't want to sit here and like wait a decade because let's be honest, our democracy uh, is kind of on the fringe of like we're on the fringe of losing it, well, foremost. So rather than going through that and waiting to get the experience and whatnot, I'd much rather just go, okay, I'm not going to allow my freedom and the freedom and the rights of Western North Carolinians just be put into the hands of someone that might do the job.
Are you saying that the things you care most about need to be fixed at the federal level rather than the local? Is that why Congress makes more sense for you?
I mean, I would say both is incredibly important, and if you think about it, I have been working on the local level, may not necessarily in a political sphere, but it does branch out to, our communities and how our local politics end up affecting organizations that want to work with those people. So in that sense, I do think that I had been working in the local sphere, maybe not necessarily in like the political realm, but at least from a public health standpoint, from a direct service standpoint, from a social service standpoint. I do think that we need more representation and understanding of the social safety nets that we have and what the plight of the American people is if we're going to actually have representation in Congress. So many people in Congress are so far removed from the issues that they end up writing legislation on that they can't really understand what it means to be on welfare, to worry about paycheck to paycheck, to know that you are one like bad car wreck away from going into bankruptcy. They don't have that lens. And we need that lens because if we're not doing that, then we're not representing the people.
And you've chosen, I mean, Democratic Party is the obvious choice for you, given your politics. Um, but you don't see the right candidates, your competitors in this primary. You don't see them recognizing the plight of the working class enough.
I don't think that they truly understand what it's like to be paycheck to paycheck or have your health insurance contingent upon an awful worker that you have to stay with. Otherwise, you lose it for your family. Having to work multiple jobs in order to be able to try and get ahead and provide for a family. These are all things that are very much happening for the majority of the people of Western North Carolina. And of the people that are currently, vying for this seat, I don't really see that amongst them.
You sound a little bit like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When she had a working class background and she was only 29, I think, when she first took office.
Mhm.
There's a young woman in Illinois, Kat Abigazela,
Mhm.
who is also running a similar campaign as an outsider, but she's raised a whole heck of a lot of money. AOC raises a whole heck of a lot of money because you need to raise a whole heck of a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Can you raise that kind of money for this campaign?
We have multiple paths to victory based off of the money that we are able to raise. What I can tell you is, since I've been in the race in April, I have spent the majority of my time traveling Western North Carolina and talking with the people. And I focused in on that because we've seen time and time again where the focus of candidates is immediately to fundraising rather than understanding what is going on with the people and listening to them and knowing what it is that they want out of a representative. So rather than going straight into giving money, I wanted to focus in on what is it that they need first and foremost. And we have been fundraising this throughout this entire time. We are going to be doubling down on said fundraising and focusing a lot more on it. That being said, we do have multiple paths to victory. And one of the things that I told Corey back when I did my first interview with him during the District 11 convention was I would much rather work with less money and the support of the people than have to immediately go straight to corporate lobbyists or corporate PACs rather than special interest PACs and whatnot. And I would say that the money and the contributions that we've gotten in is very much reflected of that. Like almost all of it is from the people of Western North Carolina as a whole. The last thing I would say into that is yes, money is absolutely important and money does win races, but it's not necessarily about how much money you raise, it's how you spend it. I'm not trying to sit here and waste taxpayer money or the money of Western North Carolina, especially when we are still recovering from Helene, from a major disaster. Asking people for money when they are still struggling is, it's difficult for me. I won't deny that. And having the support of the people means way more to me, and I would rather work with less and know that our campaign is still standing for the values of the people of Western North Carolina than have to, cater to lobbyists or corporations.
All right, well, let's switch to then from money to policies. If you spend some time in Polk County, what do you think you can tell people that will resonate with them? Why should they support you rather than some better known names who have? I mean, the two big candidates in this primary, neither of them are from Polk County, but
Mhm.
they have a certain profile. So, what do you tell people to sort of make them remember who you are?
As someone who is younger, as someone who would be a part of the millennial generation, the perspective that I have is going to be completely different than anyone that is going to be in the older realm. And we need more young people representing us in Capitol Hill in politics because they are not being represented at all. They don't feel like they're being represented, and it's the reason why we are seeing so many of the younger population just completely disillusioned by politics in general. Having someone who is younger, who understands what it was like to go to high school, be told that you need to go to college, get a good degree, and our economy and our workforce and capitalism will take care of you. And then doing that, and then kind of being left up a creek without a paddle because we were kind of forgotten and the promises that we were told were not fulfilled. That is an incredibly important perspective that I do think a lot of politicians these days don't necessarily like tune into. They also don't really tune into the younger generation who is struggling to even find jobs in the first place. And the majority of them are still living with families, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we are wanting people to have active lives, be able to get a job, raise a family, have kids, get married, what have you, that requires having a vibrant economy that works for all of the people, not just a few of the people. So, what I can bring to the table is a perspective that none of the other candidates in the race right now can have.
But Polk County, it kind of skews a little bit older. I
Mhm,
think the median age is like 54 or something. We've got younger folks there's a couple of thousand people and kids in the schools. But how do you convince an early retiree, say, that given that they spend most of their life with politicians who are close to their age, why should they support someone who's half their age and hasn't climbed up the political ladder? In other words, you're asking them to look at you as an alternative to the way we're doing things. Why should they bet on that? Again, because our county, it's older, it's very conservative. This county went 2/3 for Trump last time.
mhm. Well, just even though I am of the younger age, that doesn't mean that I don't care about, the older generation. Like, to best understand what Western North Carolina has been, we need to have those conversations with the older generation. Right now, the economy is affecting everyone across the board. Right now, cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are affecting the older generation. I believe in these social safety nets for a reason. They are there to support people who have given their all to America, to our society, to the people of Western North Carolina. Those things are promises that we have set up for the people who have worked and shown up for our society. And right now, more and more people who have done that are being denied those resources, that social safety net that they have been, providing towards their entire life. I firmly believe that they have earned that, and I will fight for them tooth and nail to make sure that they get the support that they need. So that way they can retire with dignity. So that way they don't have to go out there and do full time jobs when they themselves should have the opportunity to rest. I believe in those things, and I want that for everyone. And that includes people who may not like me, who may not vote for me, because the mark of a good politician is someone who cares about everyone, not just those who are going to put money into their pockets.
All right. Here, let's then ask I think the toughest of the questions I could come up with, and that is, how do you convince someone who, even if they are open to the idea of voting for a relative newcomer, in this county, in this district, how do you convince them to vote for a Democrat? Because let's face it, people as unqualified as Madison Cawthorn won because they had an R after
Mhm.
their name. So how do you reach out to folks, maybe the soft middle?
Mhm.
How do you switch them? Because you're gonna if you get this nomination, you will have to get some Republicans to vote for you.
Mhm. Absolutely. Right now, because so many people are being affected by the current administration, we are seeing a lot of people lose their faith in the Trump administration, in the legislative branch, in the executive branch, because it is indeed affecting them. And it's the one of the things, honestly, that I like really, really like struggle with when it comes to, Western culture is people don't care until they care, until it affects them. And that's what's happening right now. We're seeing so many people being affected by these abhorrent policies that they want to know that someone is actually in their corner at the end of the day. What I've been doing is sitting down and actively listening to people, using the soft skills that I have cultivated from years of advocacy, from years of supporting people in their lowest lows through addiction, through mental health and whatnot, and taking that so that way I can better understand what is going on with them and then therefore be able to advocate for them. What I think sets me apart when it comes to things like addiction, it doesn't care socioeconomic status, it doesn't care race, it doesn't care gender, it doesn't care age. It's going to affect everyone in some way, shape, or form. And when you are doing stuff in recovery, especially here in Western North Carolina, while I do not have the same, values and whatnot as some of the people that came on through as clients, I still had to work with them. I worked with people who were proud boys, who were white supremacists, who were gangbangers. And despite the fact that for all intents and purposes, they would not want me to exist, I still had to show up and support them and find that common ground. And if I'm able to do that with someone who is in the throes of, early recovery from addiction, from post-acute withdrawal syndrome, who does have completely different views than I have, but still be able to sit down and talk about, like family values and what life looks like outside of addiction and recovery and what these next steps look like. If I'm able to do that with people who are, volatile and trying to get better, I feel like I'm gonna be able to do that with anyone because at the end of the day, it's about them and listening to them first and foremost and wanting to them to thrive, regardless of if there's a D or an R or an I in front of their voting block. It's the people that matter first and foremost. And I will always defend what the people need first and foremost, always, because that's what it's supposed to be about. End of the day.
Would you agree with this diagnosis of what happened this last few elections, that a huge portion of America is disillusioned with the concentration of wealth, the out of touch elites, the people who are focusing on things that don't seem to matter to them? That's a real thing that people didn't invent. This is a real dysfunction in America. And then half of the country voted for the wrong party to solve those problems. It's a common diagnosis, but so your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit more nuanced. I don't think that the rhetoric that has been essentially pushed by the mainstream media for decades now is correct. I don't think it's about R versus D. I don't think it's about left versus right. I think ultimately all of the problems come from top down. We have a mass concentration of wealthy people who are hoarding wealth, very similar to the robber barons that happened 100 years ago. We are seeing corporations treat people with disgusting work conditions and slave wages just like it was 100 years ago. We're end up like in the process where we are indeed seeing the repeat of history. And the focus, I do think, is needs to be from the top down and recognizing that if we actually tax the rich and have corporations put the money in that they're supposed to be putting in through trickle-down economics, the majority of the problems that we have here in America have the ability to be solved because they'll be funded and taken care of. When it comes to the diagnosis that a bunch of people voted for the wrong party to fix America, again, I do think that it's more nuanced than that. We've seen a PSYOP campaign happening since Reagan that's focusing in on splitting the left and the right and othering people based off of political party rather than recognizing that the people have more in common with each other than they will ever have with the rich and the ultra rich. And at the end of the day, it's the people that you have community with that are going to be there for you. We saw that with Helene, and it wasn't just Polk County. That sentiment was all across Western North Carolina, and the amazing thing is it's still there now. The community-based organization and the grassroots organization aspect of it is what is going to be able to keep the heart of America alive. I don't think focusing in on you voted X, Y, and Z way or you are a Trumper is necessarily going to be the best way to have this. If we look at it from a psychological perspective, if we had someone who was in a cult, any other cult, that was trying to get out of it, that was starting to think and deconstruct the rhetoric, the first thing that we would do is not be like, well, you screwed up. You voted for them. We wouldn't other them. We would try and support them as they're trying to get out of that mindset and break free from the cult mindset. I do think that that's where we need to be focusing first. It's very much a person-centered approach. The lens of unconditional positive regard is one that I absolutely love, which means that I love you, I care for you, I support you, and I want what's best for you from 6 feet away. Which means that I will support you and do everything that I can, and I want what's best for you, but I'm not going to let your life and the way that you choose to handle things affect my serenity. But it still, at the end of the day, doesn't mean I don't care for you.
Well, that's a philosophy that I don't think too many people could have a big problem with. The trick is to get people out of their habit. If you're raised in a Republican family, if you've just, you've been watching Fox News since you're 4 years old, it's really hard to say, okay, here's the problem. I'm going to vote for the Democrats rather than Republicans because my parents have voted Republican and their parents have voted Republican. I'm just saying, how do you shake people out of that? How do you get them deprogrammed?
I don't try and focus in on the fact that like they focused in on Fox News or Republican or anything. I try to focus in on the issues at hand and what is actually affecting the people. So I would ask the people of Polk County, take a look at the platform, take a look at what we have been, cultivating from talking to other people of Western North Carolina, our community members. Focus in on those issues. I think at the end of the day, if we look at it from an issue standpoint rather than a left versus right, we're going to have a lot more in common than people realize. I want people to have their basic needs met. I don't want them to have to struggle and have to have 2.5 jobs. I don't want them to have an entire job dedicated just to raising like enough money for childcare. I want to make sure that our schools are set up for success for our kids. I want to make sure that our kids have viable options on careers outside of just going straight into blue collar work or straight into college. I want an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthy or the ultra rich. I would ask, take a look at the issues, take a look at that standpoint, take a look at what I've been doing actively for the past decade, which is showing up for people regardless of the R or the D, and focus in on that. What actually matters to you. And if what matters to you resonates with our platform, we're here for you. And if it's not what resonates with your platform, please, by all means, tell me. So that way we can adjust the platform as necessary to affect change for everyone. And the last thing that I will say on this, if I may,
Sure.
I will abide by a vote of no confidence. And what that looks like is if 60% of Western North Carolina gets together, has a vote, and says, I am not doing my job, I will step down of my own accord, not because there's a law, not because you know, we have the legislation in there for it. I will step down because it is the moral thing to do, because it's not about me. It's about the people here first and foremost. So if they don't think that I'm doing the job correctly, I will step down. And as of right now, I am the only candidate that has agreed to do something of that factor. So if you don't like what I'm able to do in Capitol Hill, you have the agency and the autonomy to knock me out. By all means, primary me. I'm not going to get upset about that, because that's the way it's supposed to be with public servants and civil servants. They're there for the people.
Okay. Final question. Let's turn that on its head. If you don't win this primary, are you still going to be involved in this next election?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are in a huge paradigm shift right now within Western North Carolina. The last year at this time, we were at an R8. At the beginning of the year, we were at an R5. Right now, we're sitting at an R2. More and more people are shifting towards policies and issues that are actually going to be affecting them, rather than just the straight up rhetoric of, left versus right. I am going to continue to champion those things and hold our legislators accountable to the people and what the people need and what is going to be most effective towards them. I am not going to stop holding billionaires accountable and corporations accountable. I'm not going to stop until the people are put first and foremost. And that requires having a voice in there. I will be more than happy to share what I have learned and the experience that I've gotten with any candidate who ends up going up against Chuck Edwards. Again, because it's not about me, it's about the people, and I'm not going to gatekeep that information. So I would extend the offer, if we ever get to that point, that I'd be happy to support and provide my expertise towards that. So that way we have a candidate that is going to be there for everyone and not just the ultra rich, not just for the administration's sake.
All right. Well, then it sounds like we haven't heard the last from you, regardless. So thanks so much for finding the time and good luck.
I very much appreciate it. And then for those who want to know, zeldaforcongress.org, we are on most socials. Reach on out. I want to hear what issues matter most to you.
All right. Thank you.
There's at least one more declared candidate in the NC11 Democratic race, but he hasn't agreed to sit for an interview, at least not yet. Meanwhile, I've arranged to speak with a Democratic candidate for NC14, Brent Caldwell, and I hope to find time for a talk with another Democrat, Doyle Brown, who wants to be the state senator for District 48. Stay tuned. You can always email me at jamesh@folklore.com with your thoughts and suggestions. Thanks for listening.